Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. I've got loads of questions for you today. As you can see, I'm still in the sort of basic setup. I'm not back in the studio yet. Things are a little bit hectic. So do forgive the sort of basic setup that I've got. It's back to 2018 Kendo Rant. But yeah, I've got plenty of questions to get to. Before I do, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join the Kendo Show Early Access group as well, of course. That's a great place to post your questions. And lastly, just before I jump into the questions, it's come to my attention that some of you are not shopping at KendoStar. What's that about? I thought we had a deal. You know, I put these videos out for free. You guys shop at KendoStar. That's how it works, right? Come on, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Okay, well, in all seriousness, don't forget to do your shopping at KendoStar.com. That's my website. That's, of course, what pays for all of this to happen. It's what keeps the lights on, keeps these videos coming. And, of course, it's the best Kendo equipment website in the galaxy and the history of time. So, yeah, go and shop there. Okay. Right, let's get right into these questions because we've got loads of them. Andy, I'm shocked you passed Sandan, unable to correctly tie your men. There must be more to the story. So this is in reference to last week. Somebody asked me if there was something that I didn't learn about Kendo until sort of later on in my career, or later on in sort of my experience, something that I wish I'd learned earlier. And one of the things I did say was that I wasn't able to tie my men properly until I was actually third dan. And it's true, it is true, and it's true for a lot of people because let me tell you exactly why. I'm not sure if we'll get this on the camera, but when you tie the men, it has to be tied in yokomusubi. Okay, yokomusubi means that the knot has to be horizontal and not vertical. Okay, that means it has to be tied in the right way and not sitting this way. And I was tying it so it was sitting this way. Okay, until I was third dan, I didn't know how to do that. Now, I assume everyone watching this knows how to do that. But just in case you don't, I'm going to give you a quick example now. All right, when you tie these like this, okay. Let me redo it properly. So when you tie the men himo, whether it's the men himo, the tare himo, any sort of bow that you tie in Kendo has to be done this way. All right. First, you cross them over, right? You cross them over, okay, and you pass one underneath the other to make the first part of the knot, okay, like that, okay. I'm not sure if we're getting on camera, okay? Just like that, yeah? Then we're going to get, you'll have one side from this knot, you'll have one side coming upwards and one side coming downwards like that. Can you see that? I'm looking down on the monitor here, that's why I'm looking down and away, okay? Yeah, you'll have one side coming up and one side coming down. Now, I like to make the loop from the side that's coming up, in which case this has to wrap around underneath, okay? Because it's coming from below now. I made the loop from the one from above, so the one from below has to wrap around underneath. Now, what I mean by that is it cannot wrap around over the top like that, otherwise it'll turn out to be the tate musubi, the wrong one like that, as you can see. Yeah, that's wrong, okay? Right? So if you make the loop from the side that comes out the top like that, then the one that comes out the bottom must wrap around the bottom that way. Okay, so that it ends up as yokomusubi that way. If you make the loop from the other side, all right, maybe you're left-handed or whatever, my wife likes to do it the other way, from the side that comes out the bottom, and you wrap around the string that goes around the top, then this now has to wrap around the top, all right, not around the bottom. It has to wrap around from the top. Okay, so if you're wrapping around from the piece that comes out from the top, it must go over the top. If you're wrapping around from the piece that goes from the bottom, must go from the bottom. Now, I'm sure someone's going to come at me and go, well, I tie it by making two loops and doing this and that. Don't do it this way, all right? And then you'll tie it right, okay? So if you tie your shoelaces using two loops and doing it a different way, that's fine, but don't tie your bogu like that. Tie it this way so that you definitely do it right and you don't get to third dan looking like you don't know what you're doing, like I did, okay? So that's that. Right, next question. I want to ask about Kentai no Ichi, because you're supposed to hit your opponent, shout, and hit the floor with Fumikomi at the same time, right? Do we have to initiate the three movements at the same time? I'm asking because I find my hands move faster than my feet, so when I start the strike and Fumikomi at the same time, I hit the opponent before I make Fumikomi. and therefore not making Kikentai no Ichi. Now, when I practice at home, I try to move my hands just a split second slower than my feet so that I can have Kikentai no Ichi. I want to ask, is this correct, or am I unknowingly doing it wrong? So one, you're overthinking a little bit. Two, Kikentai no Ichi doesn't actually mean you have to hit, stamp, and shout at the same time, but it's the most common way that we express it in Kendo. So let's stick with that theme. It's actually more common that people stamp before they hit. But look, I've got a video about this. If you go and watch my video about Fumikomi, then search the Kendo show Fumikomi. I explain this in detail of how to fix this exact problem. Basically, the best way to do this is to start in Chudan, lift your hands over your head first. And what you can do is, if you can learn to lift your hands and lift your right foot at the same time, and then push off your left foot, bam, with a stamp and a strike, it should all start to lock together. But otherwise, it's just practice, I'm afraid. Okay? But definitely go and watch that video. It'll definitely help. Next one, I hope you can help me. I'm the only woman in my dojo, and it's a bit embarrassing to ask people there. I've recently been hit in my breast by a missed kote. It's the second time this has happened, and I'm worried. Is there anything specific, Kendo specific, to help protect me? Excuse me. You shouldn't be getting hit there after a missed kote, all right? That's definitely a problem. Sorry, I keep coughing. I am still actually getting over that cold that I told you about last week. But there isn't anything particularly Kendo specific. I do know that lots of women like to wear like a sports bra, something like that. It's not something that I can speak from experience from, I'm afraid. But yeah, I mean, they definitely shouldn't be hitting your breast when you're receiving kote. It depends when it's happening. If this is happening during Kihon, then there's definitely an issue, and I think it's all right for you to talk to your teacher about it. You don't have to be super specific or graphic in how you describe it. You can just say that, like, look, I got hit like under my armpit area, and obviously it's quite sensitive and it hurts quite a lot. I don't quite know how to deal with it, and hopefully your teacher will sort of discuss that with the other students, because and if there is anyone out there that's practicing, well, it doesn't matter whether you're practicing with women or not. Actually, it makes no difference. You should be focusing on accuracy before power. Kendo isn't about how hard you can hit. Now, you do have to make strikes with sufficient force to make ippon, but if you're not able to strike accurately, you're not at the stage yet where you're supposed to be trying to develop that. So if you're finding that your strikes are missing, and you should notice that, whether it's you're hitting kote or you're hitting do, then you need to calm down a little bit with the power that you're putting into it and focus on your accuracy. Even if it means you're only just touching the bogu for now, you need to learn to strike accurately, before you strike with power. That's really, really important. But yeah, I mean, I'm afraid I can't specifically say to you, oh, here's a good product to use to protect it. I think, and the other thing to do is I'd let them know that they've hurt you. I mean, you don't have to say, hey, you just hit me right, and say that specific thing. It's embarrassing, but you can kind of go, oh, like that. And they'll notice then, and hopefully they'll take a bit more care. I don't think there's any problem with you doing that whatsoever, to be honest. Next one, throughout your Kendo life, actually, before I do this, these questions are now from the Kendo Show Early Access group. The previous ones were from the YouTube comments. Leave your comments down below if you want to leave them there, or if you get in the Early Access group, there's a link in the description. That's a great place to post them, because you don't just get answers on here, but it's a great community. There's thousands of Kendoka in that community now from all around the world, of all different levels, right up to 7th Dan, who will also give you their input too. So definitely get in that group. It's free to join. There's the link in the description down below. Right, throughout your life experiences, what has been your biggest personal struggle with Kendo? What do you still struggle with? Oh, that is a good question. I think my biggest personal struggle with Kendo is to keep going, keep doing it. There's been plenty of times when I felt like I didn't want to. I wanted to quit, or I've asked myself why I'm doing it. But yeah, I mean, I've managed to overcome that so far, and I love Kendo, I really do. But you know, at the same time, there's times when I've absolutely hated it, when either I've not achieved something that I wanted to achieve, or I lost a match or something like that, or it's just been harder, or you know, maybe this sensei said something to me that didn't align with my expectations of myself, that sort of thing. I think that's been my biggest thing, and it still is something that I struggle with. So I definitely say that. Other than that, Ashisabaki is super hard, and it's still really hard for me. So yeah, that. Next one, I've been training for about 8 months, but for reasons and circumstances, I cannot make practice for probably the next couple of months, maybe even longer, but I hope not. Other than Suburi and Suriashi, on what other exercises should I work on, try to prevent reverting to zero from lack of practice? Just Suburi and Suriashi. Don't do anything else. There's no point doing anything else. You're only eight months in. Practice your Suriashi. Try to practice, if you've learned hitting with Fumikomi in the dojo, practice that at home as well. The stamping. So yeah, Suburi, Suriashi, I wouldn't do anything else. Other than that, Mitori Eiko. Yeah, keep watching plenty of Kendo on YouTube. We post it to the KendoStar website blog every day, at least once a day generally. We'll post some videos up there that are definitely worth watching, so you've always got Kendo fresh in your mind. Next one. Is the Gunomezashi stitching pattern any more protective or shock absorbent than the standard line zashi? Gunomezashi is when they have the rows of stitching in the Bogu. So the one that I had just now. Okay, you can see that there's rows of stitching. And this one is stitched with Gunomezashi because it's a Preto Bogu. And what they do with Gunomezashi, if you can see, the lines are closer together on like about from here down. And what they're actually doing is they put an extra line in between the lines that are already there. So they stitch the whole thing at this width, and then they put an extra line in the middle, all right, up to the edge of the mendare. That's what Gunomezashi is. This is a machine stitch version that shows that. I've got a hand stitched one as well, but it works the same way. And no, it's not, as with any time that you add stitches, so when you increase the millimeter width of the stitching, so if like this is 8mm, Vanguard super popular, well, our most popular set is 10mm. The old fashioned way of thinking is like 3mm, 2mm is good. It's not. Anytime that you add those rows of stitching, because what that millimeter refers to is the width between the rows, yeah? So the smaller that number is, if it's 2, it means that there's 1 every 2mm, so there's loads of stitches in there. Anytime you add stitches into the futon, it makes it thinner, and it takes away the cushioning protection, all right? So having Gunomezashi does not make it more protective or shock absorbing. It does the opposite, okay? It makes it less shock absorbent. It makes it a bit less protective. What it does do, the reason it exists, is it makes it more stiff and rigid, so it's less comfortable to put on this area. That's why we don't do it across the whole thing. Well, it's one reason we don't do it across the whole thing, because it makes it stiff and rigid, right? It's less comfortable because it's not that soft cushion that you get from the wider stitching. But we do it on like the mendare so that we can have that rigidity, that stiffness, so we can make a nice shape like that, and it hold its shape, you see, just like that. Further, the more stitches that it has, it does add durability, especially in places where it rubs against the body. So when you're wearing the men, of course, the mendare, they rub against the shoulders like this, right? So having Gunomezashi or a tighter stitching on the mendare is a way of just boosting the durability of where it rubs against the shoulders. Okay, so if you had wider stitching, the actual fabric that makes up the men, that would wear away a little bit quicker. All right, it's not a massive thing, but that's why you tend to see Gunomezashi on the mendare, and you tend to see it on the tare panels as well. All right, but putting across the whole Bogu set, it's not a super useful technique. Next one. Question about ki-ai in Japanese tournaments. Besides the normal kakegoe at the start and sometimes in between, I noticed watching Japanese competitions that they do some ta-ta-ta or sa-sa type sounds. Sorry, I don't know a better way to phrase it. In between or in tsubazeri-ai. I wonder if there's some meaning for this for a long time. Okay, so I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of a recent thing. It's a pretty recent thing. They get to tsubazeri-ai and they do this sort of ta-ta-ta-ta or sa-sa-sa-sa sort of thing. And no, it doesn't have a specific meaning. It's I always think it's a little bit funny. It's a little bit odd, to be honest. And yeah, I probably best not to copy that. To be honest, I think it's a kind of habit, or a way they're kind of helping themselves, kind of sort of cheer themselves on in a way, or sort of raise their own spirits, you know. But I think it's a slight deviance in a way from the traditional concept of kiai or kakegoe. Okay, next one. My sensei recommends that I should buy an obi as my tare keeps falling off during practice. What is an obi, and do you sell them? Okay, well, an obi is it's a belt. It's usually used in iaido rather than kendo, to be honest. We do sell them if you want one, though. Just drop us an email. We can sort one out for you. There are people that do wear them in kendo, so it's certainly not that unusual. However, you do not require an obi to wear the tare. The tare does not need an obi to be worn properly. So it sounds to me more like that probably you're not tying the tare correctly or tight enough when you're tying it. If it keeps falling off during practice, you need to tie it quite a lot tighter. All right. I don't think the obi is going to help you with it, if I'm honest. Next one. When practicing seme, we often emphasize keeping the right foot floating whilst making the left foot steady and ready to push the hip forward. But in shiai, it looks like people tend to use a more dynamic form of seme. How does this connect to what we practice in kihon? And also, what's the right moment for moving your left foot in relation to distance or timing? Yeah, if you watch my video about seme, I talk exactly about that, actually, about moving your right foot forward first to apply seme, and then when the opponent reacts, making a strike. Actually, they do use that quite a lot in high level shiai. It's just that it happens much quicker. It's not very obvious. But if you watch it in slow motion, you'll find that often in the case of Debanowaza, that actually the person who made the strike is the one that started moving the right foot first. And if you watch some of my analysis videos, I highlight that quite a lot. It happens in an incredibly fast pace. So it's very easy. It looks like they're both just going at the same time, but that's not actually what's happening at all. In reality, it all plays out very, very quickly, much quicker than I show in that video. So when you're practicing it in kihon, you're kind of training yourself so that you're able to apply that in a more realistic situation when the time comes. And in terms of moving your left foot in relation to distance or timing, I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean, but your left foot pretty much stays still as your right comes forward. And then the instant the right foot hits the ground for fumikomi, the left must come in quickly, as fast as possible, to carry you forward for suriashi, for your zanshin. Okay, next one. This is several questions all from the same post, so I'm going to answer them all together because it's all from the same person. How long can one Bogu set? I'll answer them one at a time, though. I'll answer each one before moving on to the next one. How long can one Bogu set last approximately before someone has to get a new one, either for aesthetic or other reasons? Depends on the Bogu set. It completely depends on the Bogu set. If you go and buy a $300 Bogu set, not from KendoStar because we don't sell junk, but if you went and bought something like that, it's hard to say. It could last 6 months. It could last 2 years. I'd be very surprised if you got any longer than that out of it. If you buy a decent Bogu set like we sell, even one of our lower priced ones, you could expect to get several years of practice out of it again, but it depends how often you use it. If you practice 5 times a week, for example, and you only use one Bogu set, which is something I definitely not recommend, by the way, but if you're practicing like 4 or 5 times a week and only using one Bogu set, then yeah, it's going to wear out a lot quicker. It's not really fair for me to answer saying, well, a Bogu set would approximately last this long, because it's so variable on different situations. But you get a good Bogu set made of good materials, and you don't trash it in practice, then yeah, there's no reason why it couldn't last 15, 20 years or more. So yeah, it really depends on the materials that it's made from, the quality of it, and then how you treat it and how you use it. Next one, is it possible to get your hands on the kendogi fabric? Yeah, it's quite expensive though. If you give me an email, mail@kendostar.com, I'll get a quote for you. But it's more expensive than buying a kendogi. Next one, is it possible to get a Bogu with the stitching in the shape of diamonds like the one in the picture? And you did post a picture. Yeah, it's possible. If you wanted us to make that for you, we could. I don't put that as a product because I think it looks a bit goofy, and it doesn't have a massive amount of benefits putting it across the whole Bogu set. I don't think it looks that good. I think it looks a bit cheap personally, but that's a sort of personal opinion. But yeah, find me an email if that's something you want. Next one. What do you do if the nakuyu is too sturdy to tie tightly? So the actual leather itself is a little bit stiff. Tie it as tight as you can. Use the shinai, it'll come loose. Untie it, retie it. It'll start to get softer from there. Next one, should elitism be part of Kendo? No, absolutely not. I don't know what you mean by elitism exactly, but thinking that you're better than somebody else, like innately, isn't something that at all should exist in Kendo. And it does exist a lot in Kendo. I hear a lot that people think that Kendo is better than some other activities. That's personally a pet peeve of mine when people say, "Oh, Kendo is not just like, you know, another sport like this." When I think that I have a lot of respect for the sports people, and I don't think that Kendo is necessarily elevated above other sports or even other martial arts. And I don't think it's healthy, not healthy, but I don't think it's conducive to good Kendo for us to have that outlook on things. But you know, it should elitism shouldn't be part of Kendo. Right, next one. Gunomizashi was mentioned above. I wonder, Andy, if you might expand on the various stitching types, Gunomizashi, Nanamizashi, and Bozashi, used on the men and the men dare, and what their relative advantages and disadvantages might be. I'm thinking in terms of hand stitch Bogu here, though I imagine it'd be similar for modern machine stitch as well. Yeah, it's pretty much the same, whether it's both hand stitched or machine stitched. The principles are the same. Gunomizashi is exactly as I just described before, just like this one, where they put a row of stitching in between each interval. I've got a hand stitched one here, so you can see actually. It's easy to mistake. I'll get it up to the light there. No, I can't quite see it. But it's easy to mistake this for Nanamizashi because what they do is with a tezashi set, hand stitch set, after they stitched it all, they run they do what's called senbiki. So they draw, you see how it looks like a grid. I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera, but if you've ever seen hand stitch Bogu, it looks like a grid, but that isn't what it is. They're little dots, the stitches. And then these lines are scored into the fabric using a hot tool. It's called senbiki. All right. And they do that in a grid pattern, but when they do gunomizashi, they do it diagonally in a cross pattern that way. So it looks like diagonal stitching, but actually if you look on the underside, again, I don't think you're going to see on the camera, but the stitches are straight, and it's just that there's an extra row of stitches between the regular lines. Okay. So I've got a Vanguard men here. This is the original Vanguard. This has got Nanamizashi, which is diagonal stitching. But as you've probably seen on the product description, we use a tighter stitching for the mendare, whilst also putting it in diagonal. Now, this isn't actually something you often see in hand stitch Bogu. In fact, you never see it really. But with machine stitch Bogu, it's a little bit easier to accomplish. So we achieve the effect of both gunomizashi and nanamizashi. Well, if you look at something like the V1, which is a bit of a cheaper model than this, that just has the straight nanamizashi, so it has the same 10mm diagonal stitching on the mendare there. Now, in terms of your advantages and disadvantages, I don't have anything here that's bozashi. We don't make anything that's bozashi. Bozashi is just straight stitching. And we do actually now. We do have the Vanguard Basic. That's bozashi. I don't have one right here to hand. That's the easiest way of making Bogu. That's why we use it on the basic model, and it's where the whole futon is just stitched in one straight line, at the same width. Now, in terms of advantages with gunomizashi, I talked about it before. It makes the futon less protective, less comfortable, but it makes it moldable and more durable. So it's good for on the mendare and on the tare panels. Nanamizashi, again, it gives that little bit more flexibility. So it's especially good for the mendare. And you can combine that with tighter stitching to get a similar effect to gunomizashi, but have a little bit more comfort from it, which is why we do it on the Vanguard. It does sacrifice a little bit of the moldability though. And then bozashi, bozashi just allows you to make a men for a more economical price. All right, so it does mold a little bit easier than nanamizashi even does, actually, because you've got the sort of you're kind of molding it across the stitches, so it actually molds quite nicely compared to just straight out nanamizashi. But yeah, its main advantage is that it's lower cost. Okay, so it allows us to produce a Bogu set that's a little bit more reasonable in terms of price, which is why we've done it on the basic Vanguard model. If that makes sense. Okay, right, next one. As an instructor, how much time do you spend physically practicing with members versus observing them? It really depends on the group of people that I'm working with. For the most part, I'd say it's probably like 60-40 or 70-30. But if it's like a beginner's group, then of course it's more like 90% observing. Whereas if it's a very advanced group, then I might move more to sort of 60-40, 50-50 type end of things. If I'm there in a role as an instructor, it depends really. But, you know, it's important for an instructor to see from the outside as well as experience actually practicing with the students as well. So both elements of that are very important. Next one, question on footwork. I'm a few months into Kendo, and on a few occasions I've had bad blisters on the centre ball of my left foot. I heard this means I'm pivoting too much. Any tips? So I think somebody actually commented this already on the early access group, but the cause of this is invariably when your left foot is pointing outwards like this and you haven't got your toes straight. Super hard to get used to keeping your feet pointing forward, keep your feet parallel, keep your hips straight. But what happens is if you have them this way, as you try to push forward this way, you kind of turn as you do that, and that's how you get those blisters on the ball of your foot. It'll come with time and practice. It'll get better, I'm sure. Next one, is it possible to achieve higher Dan grades, brackets 5th Dan and above, if you aren't very good at teaching? Well, yeah, I think so. I don't think everybody's really good at teaching, even some of the really high grade senseis. But I think that you do acquire experience in teaching. You get better at it as you achieve the downgrades. So even if you're like a lower grade and you don't feel like you make a good teacher, you'll find that your ability to teach students and your ability as a teacher does improve as you ascend the ranks of the downgrades. And I think that's part of what Kendo's for as well, right? So yeah. Next one, I have a chronic illness which sometimes flares up. Due to medical problems and a planned operation, I cannot train at the moment. I've been training for about 2.5 years. How can I prepare myself for re-entering Kendo, and how do I deal with the illness interrupting a regular schedule? So, yeah, I mean, all you can do is you mustn't rush to get back into the dojo, because the worst thing you want to do is make anything worse or hurt yourself more. But try to keep, I think someone commented a similar thing as well, actually, but try to keep in touch with the dojo if you can. Try to, visit as much as you can and go and watch practice when you're able to. I definitely think that's something that will help you out. And do lots of Mitori Geiko in between. Speak to your sensei, make sure they know the reason why you won't be able to, continue a really regular schedule as maybe some of the other students do. And I'm sure they'll be very understanding. Like I say, I think the best thing is to keep in touch on a sort of social side in a way. Go along, do some Mitori Geiko, watch the practice, make sure everyone, you're friendly with everyone and keeping in the loop, as it were. And like I say, and watching Kendo on YouTube is a great thing to do as well. Okay, next one. I'm going to take the Shinsa for 3rd Dan this coming March in Hong Kong. Any tips or links would be very much appreciated. Okay, so look, for 3rd Dan, again, I think somebody's commented on this too, but one, make sure you have the right chakuso, you're wearing your stuff properly, you do the reiho properly, and make strikes that are able to meet the criteria of Yuko Datotsu. That's basically it. Okay, that means you have to be able to make strikes with Kikentai no Ichi. You have to be able to do Fumikomi, and they have to be timed with the strike. And it has to with Zanshin. Okay, you have to be able to make strikes that meet the criteria of Yuko Datotsu. That is essentially what you need to be able to do. And if you have to demonstrate kirikaishi, that's your perfect opportunity to do it, because the other guy's not going to be trying to hit you back. And then when you get into your keiko, again, like I say, try to make the accurate strikes with that are yuko datotsu. Sounds simple, but it's quite hard actually. Right, last one. This is the last one. Right, this has been a long video, eh? Right, does being on a national kendo team 1 year make it easier for you to be selected in the team for the following campaign? Brackets for the World Kendo Championships, for example. So the question is, if you get on the national team and you're on it for a year, does that help you get selected for the second round? I guess it depends, doesn't it? Depends how your first year was. If you performed well in your first year, then yeah. If you kind of fluffed it, then no. It kind of makes it look like, well, maybe we should try someone else. So it's not necessarily an advantage to being selected, having sort of a history selection. You can't, if you are a national team player, you can't assume that you're automatically going to be selected. I was on the national team, my national team, for 13 years, I think, and every year, I was challenging for my place on the team, and in my own, I never took it for granted or expected that I would be, not despite my, despite my history on the team or any of the results that I might have had. It really depends, okay? And even so, even if you've been a successful player, it depends on the selection process of that specific national team. Lots of national teams have different criteria, right? Maybe the sort of process that selects a national team has a different plan in mind than using somebody that's been on the team for a long time. Maybe they want a new team. That's also something that happens too. So I wouldn't say that it definitely makes it easier. If somebody has been on a national team for 1 year, they've performed quite well. Very rarely do people turn up on the national team in the first year and totally destroy everybody. But if you didn't kind of totally crumble, then of course it would be a benefit, I expect, for most people who are selecting players for the team to have someone that already has a little bit of experience in that situation. Okay, that's it. Like I say, quite a long video today. We had loads of questions. Thank you so much for them. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Join the Kendo Show Early Access group. You know all this stuff by now. And yeah, go and shop at KendoStar. We've got loads more content coming soon. Also, I put a post out on Instagram and on Facebook today. Our mascot, Kensei-kun. Here he is. Here we go. All right. Yeah, he's not Hachidan, right? He's just started Kendo probably. So his kamae might not be the best. And he's got kind of big feet. So don't pick on him, right? Just a cartoon. Okay, but you get a free Kensei-kun sticker with every single order that you take that you make on KendoStar. So yeah, if you want a sticker, go and buy something from KendoStar. And if you post something, post as a picture of where you've stuck your Kensei-kun with the hashtag Kensei-kun, and you might win a tenigiri. We're gonna pick some people out and give out some free tenigris. So get an order in, get yourself a sticker, stick it somewhere, snap a picture, bang in the hashtag, you might get something for free. What can you say? See you next time. Bye-bye.